Okay, so
Yeah, what were you saying? It was very interesting.
coding is something, I mean, it's a very useful skill. It can very easily translate to people being able to set up a business. You can create a website and build the most basic business. If you know how to code a little bit, that helps. Even without coding, you can build this website for a business. But if you can code, that's very, very helpful given the access to technology we have. However,
Yes, that's the value. Is the
however,
ability. That's a vision. Is the
hey,
ability.
exactly, the ability to code, but
Yes.
it comes with the prerequisite of needing to speak English because the syntax for every programming language is in English.
Because yes, and digging down into that a little bit deeper, a lot of the programming languages themselves. Yes, there's a computer logic, and yes, there's a numerical or a symbolic aspect, but it is ABC. You are using the English language or the Latin, whatever, alphabet. So because you're using that alphabet,
It becomes difficult for a non-English speaker or even somebody who isn't familiar with the alphabet, makes it impossible.
extra harder because you cannot put the South Asian scripts, the alphabetic systems, the writing systems that are prevalent throughout all of India, Sri Lanka, or even surrounding countries, Pakistan or Bangladesh. So it's very westernized alphabetically, and it's very American also. A lot of its language and cultural significance. Like even the jargon around computer science, it's very like the terminologies that have evolved, like the Scrum Master, like that's a very I think that's a very Western centric, Americanized way of thinking, where it's like one guy has to do everything, and he's in the middle of the product development and the business teams, and he has to run the scrum, has to convert developers into code in the agile methodology, and yeah, but when it comes to like actually learning the very basics of code, it's very hard because it's high level computer science. Only like the most mathematical and the most like number crunching people are doing that.
And
But it's the future of education.
and if the fundamentals of coding can be taught in a way that is agnostic of language or script, even if people learn this logic, how can they then go and use an IDE and write code or write
Because
enough?
that's what code is you have a developing environment where you write the alien programming languages, the inhuman computer languages. But it's not user friendly. It's just code. It's a code base. Can the code base become like a coloring book or an arts and craft form that's extremely cost effective, pen on paper? You don't need a $2,500 custom MacBook Pro. You don't even need a computer. Coding, that's to run the code. Coding, the understanding of coding we don't need to run code yet. We don't need to build large Django, Python applications. We don't need PHP, WordPress like systems. We don't need like C++ converters and, for like railroad networks. No, we're just talking here basics math and syntax. Why cannot it be taught with just Lego art? Lego code through Lego. That's what we're talking about.
That would be much more engaging than shoving a textbook in front of a little child. But
how would you teach it? How would you teach code if you had all the money and resources in the world and you wanted to teach all the kids under 5 how to code?
That's a very good question. That is exactly what I'm trying to find out as well. And if we were going to teach code regardless of a script or an actual language, then we would have to use colors and shapes, wouldn't we? In a very similar way that
we could adapt this, whatever system has already been built can be modeled, can be turned into a different, it's not limited. Whatever has been built for encoding song lyrics to push in colors and shapes, a language has been constructed to do that. Could the same language, beyond the novelty of singing songs in different languages, could extensions be added and minor changes made to teach computer science itself and concepts of code? Can we add on to this core language, which is simplistic and music oriented? Can it grow into a computer science teaching language? A computer science art based, a real IRL of tech for kids.
Or even my sister, for instance, she's an incredible artist. She can draw really well, and she would be much more open to learning something if it's in that form, because in her mind she's always like not been into the sciences, the math, but she's been into creating and art forms, and she sees color, she interprets everything in terms of color as well. And for somebody who thinks like that and feels maybe coding is not for them, would this make it much more inclusive, even if they speak English?
Yeah, and just to say that back, because it's in the medium, which means there is no textbook. It's not necessarily a video course. There's paintbrushes, paint, and the visual arts are focused. The geometries and this use of space and design is focused on, as opposed to just a hidden database that only programmers can talk with, and a hiddenness of how data is prepackaged into a mobile app or into a platform, like a social media platform. How is that data worked on? So here we're kind of giving a visual art form to data to start the conversation. What everyone who loves Facebook or TikTok, what really is that? How is that built? Well, we have systems, huge systems, but the systems are technical systems that have technical requirements, technical blueprints. Why isn't it in color and in 3 dimensions as an art form, as opposed to just its business use functionality, which no one even talks about? We just take it for granted. Only the coders, only the real soup, only the technologists have seen behind the curtain. And here we're talking about pulling it out and making it interesting, making it making it interesting and making it accessible. That's right. Everything's hidden behind the curtain. It's the back end.
Exactly.
You don't get to see it. And no one knows it is even there. Only the insiders who are writing like the scripting or the API calls, they get to see the magic and delight in it at a personal level, personal, private level.
And it's going to be even more so, given that now you could write a prompt in natural language and it generates code. But somebody who doesn't really understand coding at any level,
it's a foreign language.
It'll just be a bunch of
Chinese
jargon.
To them.
It might work, it might not, and if it doesn't work, how do you fix it? They probably won't even know what doesn't work. But you could, with AI and LLMs, you could just keep prompting it and saying that this is the error message I'm getting, it doesn't work, and it might fix it for you.
And there are foundations. One doesn't have to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
There are foundations. You what was it called again? The foundation in Pakistan, in Asia,
in Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka.
So Sanskrit is like the language from which Hindi and Sinhala and I'm guessing a few other languages that are spoken in India were derived from. So that is like the Latin to French and Spanish.
Yeah, it's the same. There's a core, just like Latin, ABC symbols are spread out and used throughout most of the world, most of the Western world, but around the India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and surrounding neighboring countries and cultures, of which I didn't even know even exist. Thousands of completely different peoples, cultures, music, arts. And they're actually of similar ethnicity or of historical similarity. Kind of like France and England and Germany are very close together. But they may have hated each other, or maybe they love each other, or maybe don't know if who's what's what and who's who, but they are all part of the greater India. It's not one country. It's 1,000 countries. But to simplicity's sake, in Western media, we're just going to say India and discriminate to some degree against people who we don't have any. One form of racism is I don't understand you and I hate you. The other form of racism is in India, we have such rich cuisine and culture and food, and we're not going to share it with you, America, because you are not nice to us, so we are going to hide all our secret recipes and our secret culture and music. Not just culture, art and music. And we're going to build all the software in the world because we're smarter and we'll do it for cheaper. And there's more of us. How come India has not taken over the world yet? Or is it secretly?
They'll get there. They have a very strong economy.
Police!
They're going in that direction. But yeah, even in places like that where like India, China, where they don't, like the default is not to learn the English script. Maybe a lot of people who live in and around cities end up learning it, but the default isn't to learn it. And if somebody isn't into math and like more of the STEM fields, then they might not even consider coding. There are a lot of no-code tools out there. There are a lot of AI platforms that help you code without really needing to know what's going on behind the curtain. But understanding that way of thinking, the logic of programming, it'll help people think in different ways when they approach life in general, I feel. Understanding
It's not just about the educational component and the making money in the field, industry-specific educational component. It is itself an art, a sort of esoteric art of computer science. The code itself, which is hidden from the surface of the phone and the touching of the hardware. the code is no one can see. And if they could see it, they wouldn't be able to interpret 200,000 lines of like Python or a database or an enormous JSON file. There's so much you have to know. It's a language, and there's also a vast language. But it is art. It is like an art form.
It is. There's so much creativity in coding as well.
It's fun.
Right? You can. There are many ways.
It helps you think. It's like a
and it gives
coding
you,
for coding's sake.
And it gives you that feeling of having built something. That little bit of.
It's a great feeling when you
dopamine.
Write all the code, and then you hand over to the product to a non-coder or a non-technical person, never mind a non-computer science person. You hand it over to someone, and they go, "Whoa, I like that feature. I don't know if it will ever make any money, or I don't know how many thousands of pounds of caffeine and coffee beans have been grinded up to create it, but there's a satisfaction from the writing code, and then eventually you create something, and then eventually it works, and then eventually people use it. That is a feeling that one cannot give over in words or videos or images. That is a deep. Everyone should have every child should have a chance for that feeling. That's way better than just watching the coolest movie ever. There's the art. There's the creative, like, fun of you boil to create something, slave away for hundreds of hours, thousands of hours, and then you give it over as like here's a tool, and then you become the tool man, the one with the tool, and then you can give it over. And people ask, like, well, how I like the tool. I don't even know that it was built. I'm just a hammer. It's just a tool, of course. Just like a camera on a phone is. And if you don't know how it's built or the complexity of it, you're like, of course, 6 cameras on an iPhone 15. Of course, yeah. Of course, they also have to be actual microLED lenses that are storing high compression video, real-time images and sound glued together in the hundreds of thousands of like units that it actually appears real. It's all microLED, and it's all taken for granted.
Yeah.
That if a person 100 years ago saw that, they would probably their brain would explode.
But this idea of color coding language is that's something quite revolutionary. Like I've never seen something like that can be so useful at a much deeper level. And
why? Can you give us some of this current deep level thinking? I'm so used to it. I've run out of ideas.
For me, it's like the first thing that goes into my mind is like how this will help connect people from different backgrounds.
Why?
Because generally, when people don't necessarily like each other, they see the differences, but when they do like one another, they try to find a sense of commonality, or they end up seeing common ground. And with this, you can come from opposite sides of the earth and have like natively speak two languages that are completely different, where there's very, very little commonality and also very little understanding in terms of being able to communicate with each other just by using the language. But if somebody from America can listen to a Sinhala song or like a Vietnamese song or anything that's so far from what they generally speak or understand, and yet sing along, learn what the words sound like, and also get to a point where even if they don't really learn the language or aren't able to speak it, they'll learn a couple of words, or they'll learn what the language sounds like when they run into somebody who speaks the language. That's a conversation starter right there. You can be like, oh, is that Vietnamese? Are you from Vietnam? And the person will instantly be like...
You can detect.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard that that's right.
And the person will also feel like, oh, you know what Vietnamese sounds like.
How on earth do you know my
you might have
phonetics?
been there. You might know Vietnamese people. How did that happen? So that curiosity is sparked, that can create a connection between two people.
And if a person travels from America, from New York, they have to go to a business trip in China for a manufacturing thing, or they have to go to a conference in Germany for regulation, or they're nervous to go to South Korea for an innovation conference. They can, on the plane, while they're sitting on the plane for a few hours, they can grab a couple vocab basics and get that national anthem. How long do you think it takes? Maybe it only takes a few watches to really memorize.
To register? I'm guessing it depends. Because for me, when I listen to a song, I initially focus on the melody. So I can listen to a song from anywhere in the world, and I would, like, even if the song is in a language that I do understand, I put more emphasis on the melody, but I do grasp the words because I'm hearing it. But the emphasis is on the tone, the melody, the instruments. And when I've listened to it a few times over, then I start focusing more on the words. But that's how my mind naturally works. But I have friends.
Different thinking, of course.
Yeah,
different
so I have
educational.
friends who it works a bit differently. They listen to a song and they'll focus on the words first. And after a few listens, then they'll put more emphasis on the melody and the instruments. So I'm guessing it depends, because one of my friends, he'd listen to a song like 2 or 3 times, and he remembers the words. He remembers the words really quickly to a point where it's quite fascinating to see how fast he picks up on the lyrics and how fast he remembers it. So I'd ask him, like, how come you remember the lyrics so quickly? And he told me that he focuses on the words first. And after a few listens, he starts listening more and paying more attention to the melody. Whereas for me, it's the other way around. I'd have to listen to a song,
of course,
many, many, many times, like 10, 15 times maybe on repeat. And then I'd start remembering the words, unless there's something like really, really catchy and easy to remember. So
yeah, because it's music. A music video may be the most common way to present music today. A person goes on YouTube, watches it on their phone or on their computer. That may be the modern 2025 common way that people are engaging with new music content. Because it's all freely available, or a streaming service, or you're just listening to it on a walk, driving in the car on the radio, iTunes.
Yeah, people, especially...
We don't know, it's so many mediums.
They're listening to a lot of music now because they just simply have access to...
It's freely available.
It's so much more music than...
It's all fully, freely available.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even need to pay for Spotify. Like, you can use the free version or YouTube and still listen to it.
It used to be like you had to pay $20 just to physically own the CD. One album, like, which is
15 songs, maybe.
That's right.
10 songs.
It used to be you had to own it, but it was also like a collecting of, I got all my Green Day albums and my Tragically Hip albums, yeah. And you pick your artist and then you support your artist through the album. But it's changed. Music is endlessly available.
It's completely
different. Hundreds of millions of songs just sit on Spotify, and every month there are 1 billion AI generated songs. It's not even about
That's
artists
crazy. I
anymore.
didn't even know that. But
I just heard that.
that's insane. So this also something I've noticed is on Spotify.
Yeah.
There's this website called Genius.com. They have lyrics of a lot of, I would say almost all of the songs out there. And sometimes when you play a song on Spotify, it'll open up the lyrics by default. Like it'll just have the lyrics below the song, where when you click on it, it runs through the words as the song progresses. So it's almost like it's letting you read through the song. And I this makes me wonder if there's like a play where you sell your or license your technology to a streaming service where they offer something for kids, where they can use that
Brilliant.
as a system to essentially learn different songs from even the languages that they don't speak, because it will boost like their
There's a language learning component, but there's also a child component, but also a child education component.
So like
it's a tool. There's some kind of technology, raw technology that turns. How would you define? How would you explain what this technology I accidentally discovered really is? What is it?
I think it's a way to break down language and make it universal. Break down any language and make it universal. So you're taking English and you're breaking it down to 7 colors based on the sounds of the words, and somebody who has maybe even never heard of English will still know what the colors are. Well,
because color is not a symbolic thing you get used to, like the shape of a letter, the shape of a symbol. It's just color. It has a natural. Grass is always green. Water, the sun is always in the sky, the same color. It doesn't change color. So there, like, color is innate. Color is universal and pure. And it doesn't mean anything specifically. So here we're trying to give it meaning, give it some signal.
That's what we do, right?
That's what language is. Language is sound
being interpreted by somebody else.
Yeah, spoken language is sound being interpreted. Written language is signs and symbols, so you don't have to speak. Sign language is gestures. Now language can be interpreted purely as color.
Language purely interpreted as color. So the only, if one is colorblind, is there?
Because I have to hold the dog so he doesn't run out. Okay.
Oh, I'm staying here, or I'm here. It's okay.
And
we could pause and restart.